Welcome to Skills of the Future, a podcast by Perennial Talent. In this mini-series, we explore the skills and competencies needed to face the new realities of work.
Welcome to our Skills of the Future podcast. Our theme for this series is HR Game Changers, the skills and competencies needed to face the new realities of work. My name is Dan Werf. I'm principal consultant and co-founder at Perennial Talent. My guest today is Joe Dell. At Cortland, a property management company based out of Atlanta, Joe is their original talent developer, known for adding energy and humor into his training sessions. With an eye toward creating engaging and memorable learning experiences, he leads the design, development, and delivery of career development plans for on-site and corporate associates and manages the facilitation of all training programs that fit the specific needs of individual communities and regional areas, both nationally and internationally. Joe is also a certified professional in talent development. Very impressive, Joe. We are so pleased to have you on our podcast. Thanks for joining us today.
Hey, thanks for having me, Dan. I appreciate that.
Awesome. How are you doing these days? How are you surviving during this global pandemic?
Yeah, I'll tell you personally, definitely have had to be creative with just finding different ways to get out of the house and be as safe as possible. My wife is one of the, unfortunately, one of the immunocompromised, so we've had to be super cautious. Hence, me also not being able to visit my barber for the last 9 months. So I've got this nice flowing and tribute to, I guess, to all my Canadian friends out there. I've got a lot of friends in Toronto and Vancouver. The Barry Melrose announcer on ESPN for hockey got that flaring in the back here very nicely, and then I have this apparent John Travolta from Greece come over as well. So, but yeah, just weathering the storm, and I guess professionally, kind of the same thing. Just trying to be creative with figuring out different ways to provide our associates with the tools and resources and training to continue to allow them to do what they do every single day, and just trying to find how we can support them the best way that we can. So kind of on both fronts, professionally and personally, just try to be creative, like a lot of other people in this business.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And how do you think the world of work has changed, and what has the impact been of more employees working remotely these days?
Yeah, so in our industry, in the multifamily housing industry, we provide a basic need, which is housing. But I think during this phase that we're in, the importance of creating a positive and comfortable living experience has definitely been elevated. Really kind of emphasizing the maintenance and the even elevation of taking care of our residents and future residents as well. We obviously still have people looking for apartment homes, and we're wanting to make sure that's a positive experience, a safe experience as well for our customers and for our associates. So, in regards to anything changes specifically for our what we call our community teams, our office associates and our maintenance associates, they've been doing a phenomenal job with just showing up every single day with a smile on their face, and just creating value in the things that we provide as a company, and as far as a basic need. On the corporate side, a lot of us are working from home, and so we've had to again figure out different ways and really elevate our game on making sure that we are supporting our on-site associates and giving them everything they need, whether it's accounting or marketing or human resources, talent development. How can we best support them so they can continue to be the best versions of themselves? Because quite honestly, they're the ones that are keeping us afloat. They're the ones that are providing this service and experience every single day. So I think for us, as far as the biggest change is just how do we get them what they need on a consistent basis.
That sounds challenging for sure. So thinking of that talent life cycle, so from hiring people to onboarding them and then learning and development or more career pathing implications, what do you think is the biggest need or the greatest changes that you've seen? And are there any areas or roles where these changes are especially salient?
Yeah, so for us, we've been in business technically since 2005, but we really didn't start managing our assets or managing our communities until 2011. So in the world of property management and owning and operating apartment communities, we haven't been in the game really that long. You think, 9 going on 10 years is a pretty good chunk of time, but there's a lot of other companies out there that have been doing it, way longer than us. And, over that time, we've just been experiencing exponential growth and figuring out different ways to kind of flip the script on the way property management is normally done. And so we definitely rolled out different initiatives, different projects, different programs, um, and we implemented a little bit of leadership development a few years ago. But with these initiatives, they kind of took a little bit more priority, which totally understandable because they did impact the business and got us to where we are today. But
Hmm.
what we've definitely realized and what's been magnified, especially during this COVID situation, is really bringing that leadership development back and making sure our hiring managers really understand the importance of their impact on that. You kind of reference all these different phases. We call it the associate journey, and
Okay.
just the importance of what that looks like. So, for us, it's really bringing that back to the forefront. That's definitely going to be a priority of ours in 2021 is getting those hiring managers, the tools and resources to be able to, interview effectively, to be able to have a great onboarding experience for that new associate when they join us on day one. What does that development and coaching look like? As we look to enhance their skill set. And then you talk about the retention piece. How can we really maintain that contagious culture where people
Hmm.
want to continue to stay with us and continue to grow their career with us. And we even have an extra part of that life cycle that we call departure, where at the end of the day, we wish everybody could stay with us, and we do our best to create that culture and environment where people feel like they can grow. But there's going to be times where people see another opportunity or there's another passion that they find out about. And even on that departure, we want to make sure that they had a phenomenal experience with us to where sometimes, and we've noticed this recently, where a lot of people are coming back to us because of the experience they had. But at the end of the day, we want them to be a promoter of our company and their experience that they had because of everything we provided them throughout that journey. But it really starts with our leaders, and
Hmm.
making sure they have the understanding of what that looks like and making it more of a continuous and sustainable interaction every single day. And it's the little things that they can do. But we try to create, and we want to create more of a holistic approach to that life cycle so they understand, like, this is, I'm impacting somebody's life, and hopefully they understand that they have an opportunity to be that leader that associate will remember 20 years from now.
Hmm.
If somebody asks them the question, who, give me a name or tell me somebody that impacted your life that was your boss or was a leader, and hopefully they say your name, and that's kind of the big picture behind it, or the big purpose behind it.
Absolutely. That's awesome. So it seems like leadership skills and competencies are very important. So, what other skills or competencies do you think are really important right now? Or if you want to unpack some of those leadership skills a little bit more, and then what challenges do you think organizations face when it comes to finding people that have these skills and competencies or developing their people internally to kind of upskill these skills and competencies?
Right, and I think that's a lot of organizations are obviously experiencing this right now and understanding, what's going to get us through this current situation. How do we make sure that we're potentially, even better, down the road than where we started at? How do we make sure that we come out of this, you know, like a better term, how do we come out of the situation better ahead than again when we started, and what does
Hmm.
that look like? How do we make sure to identify what those gaps are for our individual contributors, our individual associates, and our leaders that have those direct reports? What does that look like for us? We've been looking at pre-COVID, even really, how can we do better at just change management, really? And I think it's definitely gotten a refined lens on understanding how we really need to approach this and improve change management internally for us as a company. But we've been working on it for a while, and I've never been a fan of that term, change management, because
Yep.
you hear that word change, and it's like, oh, I have to change, and then you throw in management, and you're going to manage my change, and people automatically get that defense, they put up that wall when they hear that. So whether you call it pivot or embracing
Mhm.
change, at the end of the day, the easiest way to reference it is change management. But our executive team, specifically our EVP of operations and what we call directors of operations and VPs of operations, have identified this opportunity and have been working together, behind the scenes on what this can look like and how can we really challenge the status quo when it comes to how we do property management. Property management has been around for a very long time. I would say since the 60s, but it's kind of been done the same way decade after decade. There's a few different things that have been changed over time, but at the end of the day, it's you're still managing different assets and communities and teams. But we've really kind of stood up and said, we just don't want to do it like everybody else. How do we do it different? But how do we make sure we're driving that value for our associates, and then driving that value for our residents and our investors as well? So for us, change management is a huge focal point that we need to make sure that we supply our associates, not just our leaders, but all of our associates, with the skills to understand what that looks like. So you can talk about things like
Mhm.
communication and listening and empathy, self-awareness. There's a lot of these different skills that kind of fall under that umbrella of change
Mhm.
management. Obviously diversity and inclusion is very, very important, and understanding, why that is important to a company and why it's important for everybody to understand what that looks like. Strategic thinking, having those difficult conversations. So for us in talent development, it's not like these things are new. I mean, these topics and skills and competencies, they've been out there. But for us, our I wouldn't say challenge, our opportunity is how do we find the ones that will make the biggest impact for our teams, for our associates, and that will support our organizational goal of really doing change management, but doing it well and doing it consistently, um, and making those learning and experiences stick. And how do we create a learning culture where that information is readily available? Because for us, you think about the leadership development piece in combination, we want it to really parallel or support the change management piece. Leadership development, though, needs to be available to everybody, whether you do have direct reports or you are an individual contributor. We want that information on, how do you learn more about communication? How do you learn more about being self-aware? So folks can see, like, okay, this is an opportunity for me to grow. This is an opportunity for me to contribute what the bigger picture is. Um, and if we're able to do that, but doing it consistently, doing it in a sustainable way, and doing it in a creative, unique, exciting, inspiring way, then for us, I think we're going to come out of this situation stronger than we went in. Um, but it's a matter of making sure everybody understands what that looks like, and
Mhm.
I think that is the challenge. Is when we fall into this trap as well, when we have an idea, an initiative, a thought, a program, a process that we want to introduce, um, sometimes we're so excited about it, we run it and we put it on our operations team because they're the ones that are going to be really managing or leading or using a program or implementing a different process. But we didn't really paint the big picture on how it fits into the big picture.
Mhm.
So they're having a little bit of confusion on, well, all right, this is coming from this department, this is coming from that department. I
Right.
don't know which one is the priority because everybody's initiative or program is the priority.
Yeah.
And for us from talent development, sometimes we get stuck in the middle because we are the vehicle to delivering that message, creating that awesome learning experience. Uh, but it's the challenge is tying in that I love to use Simon Sinek's analogy of just tying in the why. Like, why does this
Mhm.
fit into our core values? Why does this fit into what we stand for as a company? So for us, um, it's just that communication piece and transparency before
Absolutely.
anything it is rolled out. So obviously a lot of different things I know other companies are going through as well, but for us, it's really that combination of preparing our leaders for leading their teams through change, but then also making sure that we prepare ourselves and making sure we do change management very, very well and
Mhm.
effectively.
Awesome. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I loved what you said about kind of setting the communication up front and having the why, because if you just rush into a project like that without that, then it's not going to stick. So that's where a lot of projects kind of fail before they even get going, because people aren't invested in it. They're not really on board with what's happening. But if you kind of make that clear link for like, this is how what we're doing will help you as a person and the company overall, then they kind of are more willing to jump on board. So
Right. And
awesome.
the other side of that too, and especially in our industry, this industry, once you get into it, you very rarely do people leave
Hmm.
the multifamily industry because there is so much opportunity. And like I said before, it is a need, and that's why, fortunately for a lot of us, we've been able to weather this storm because we still have amazing residents that need a place to live, and luckily they call us home. But when you've been in the industry for a while, and I've fallen into this trap because I started out as a community manager. I used to run, multi-million-dollar asset, and I worked for a couple other companies before I got into training. You kind of start to get the blinders on,
Hmm.
and I think that might happen in other industries as well. If you've been in it for a while, you were taught one way because that's what worked. It worked at this company and it worked decades ago. So it kind of just rinse and repeat, and the next person teaches the next person, and the next person teaches the next person. And in the multifamily industry, it's a very incestuous industry because there's so many different property management companies out there. Somebody knows somebody that knows somebody that knows you,
Hmm.
and they probably taught you how to do it one way, and you shared it to somebody else because, quite honestly, it worked. Why reinvent the wheel?
Yep.
And that's for us is the first step in that change management is why. Like,
Hmm.
why are we doing it this way? But what happens is, and the challenge that is hopefully going to be an opportunity for us is getting folks that have been in the industry for a while to really kind of unfreeze what they know, and really kind of just take what they've been taught and put it to the side for a second, unfreeze
Hmm.
that habit, if you will, and be open to seeing what this new changes, this initiative, this program, this process, and giving time to have some feedback, some dialogue, giving them time to absorb, giving them time to implement and try out. And once it
Hmm.
becomes that habit and they see, like, oh my gosh, this actually is way better than how we were doing it before. And then they
Hmm.
kind of freeze that mentality or lens. That's what we're looking to do. But that's the change piece. People don't like change and they don't want to be have somebody manage their change. So it's making it
Exactly.
a creative experience where they're a part of, and they get a chance to collaborate and give their feedback on, what this is going to look like. That's going to better them as an individual and help their development, and then obviously partner parallels the things we're trying to do as an organization.
Hmm. That makes a lot of sense. I also loved what you said earlier about those key skills, whether it's communication or self-awareness or empathy, that you really need to kind of apply that across the board for your kind of individual contributor folks as well as the more senior level leadership folks. And that's so critical as well, to kind of clearly define what those skills mean for the different roles within the organization. So that kind of leads as a segue to the next question, which is, what do you think the future threats or points are if organizations don't take the time to clearly define what those skills are, and then what could go wrong if those threats or pain points are not addressed?
Yeah, I think I definitely feel we're not the only company in this industry that's not doing the same thing. Uh, But if you don't take that approach, or if you don't realize, like, hey, this is an opportunity for us to just do something different and unique, you're gonna if you don't apply that or try to see what those skills gaps are to continue your success, you're gonna fall behind. That's probably the
Mm.
biggest thing, and then you're gonna realize that, and now you're playing catch up.
Yep.
And as you see, where you're missing, what your organizational gaps are, and then kind of where that falls on the associates and leaders, then it's going to be more difficult to try to implement change. It's going to be harder to implement new strategies and initiatives because now you're playing catch up, and you know time is of the essence to a certain degree. And if you try to force feed these different ways you want to do business, good luck. And they really getting folks to buy in because they're not gonna see the why, or you may not even communicate the why because we got to do something different, or we need to follow what that other company is doing because they've achieved incremental success in the different ways that they're doing things. So they maybe want to replicate. It's just going to be harder to get folks to buy in, and that has a kind of a ripple effect. I feel to a certain degree because then that impacts maybe not so much it could impact your corporate brand, but I think it more so impacts your employer brand. So as folks
Mm-hmm.
are looking for companies to work for, and they see company ABC that's being able to show the proof that they are innovative and they are a game changer and they are willing to take risks, calculated risks. Uh, those are the companies that folks want to work for.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're kind of stuck in what that status quo has been, and if you're continuing to do kind of that definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result, it's not attractive. It's not, folks want to be a part of something that is different, that they feel like they're going to be able to contribute to, but they can actually see the results of their hard work and efforts. If you don't identify that or haven't identified that by now, those are a lot of different things that you're going to experience as far as pain points, and
Mm-hmm.
it's just you're playing catch up, and it's going to be hard to find. It's going to be hard to keep people.
Yep.
And then if they leave, it's going to be even harder to backfill, and you're spending obviously more money to backfill those roles. And top talent may not even want to discuss an opportunity with you just for that fact that you're behind the times.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, that makes sense. So for sure, recruitment and retention implications. So what actions do you think companies can take to mitigate some of these threats, or any advice you might have for people out there so that they don't fall prey to some of this stuff?
We kind of mentioned a few of these earlier, and communication. And I don't know that's the easy answer or the easy out, but quite honestly, it layers into just so many different things.
Mm-hmm.
And communication layers into transparency and letting your associates know throughout the entire company, what this potential change is, the discussion behind it, and kind of painting that why, that bigger picture, and making it as clear as possible. Is like this is why we're looking at this, and this is how it's going to impact us now and in the future, and this is the role that you play in it. So everybody knows, like, okay, this is coming, so they can kind of prepare, but they also understand what it means. Um, so it's not just executives that should know this, or
Mm-hmm.
frontline managers. Your groundskeeper should know this. Your housekeeper should know this. Everybody should know this and understand just what it means to them, but also taking the time to get their input on the feelings that they have about it. Right now, I think one thing that we kind of fell into is we had all these great ideas and initiatives, and they were great ideas and initiatives, but it kind of came from the outside in. I kind of mentioned that earlier,
Mm-hmm.
where maybe accounting has a new process, talent development has a new training that we're sharing, HR has information that we want to share, marketing has a different campaign. And I can empathize with our on-site associates because I've been there as a community manager with a previous company, and you're just like, I don't know where to begin.
Mm-hmm.
And if I don't take care of this one, then I get, you know, communicated to by the stakeholder of this initiative on why am I not doing this? And it's like, well, this one came in first, so I I did this one.
Right.
Um, so getting it more of and our EVP of operations really explained this very well, making sure that it's an inside out approach, right?
Mm.
So, for example, for our leadership development, we could come in and say, all right, we are talent development. We know everything about developing leaders, and this is what it's going to look like.
Mm.
But we're changing that approach, and we're actually initiating these leader focus groups. And we're taking the time to just do a quick 45-minute to an hour conversation with some of our leaders, some of our high potential, some of our new leaders, some of our new associates, and just facilitate a conversation. Like, this is
Mm-hmm.
something that we have identified as a priority, and this is also feedback we've received from our operational leaders of, we really need to bring leadership development back. But instead of coming in, here's leadership to 2021, let's hear from you. Like, what are the things that you feel like you need? to develop yourself as a leader? What are some topics you would like to learn about? How do you like to learn? Do you prefer, in person, if we can make that happen? Is there anything that really strikes you as, I love watching YouTube videos, and that's how I get my information on
Mm-hmm.
developing myself as a leader. I like, short articles. We need to really understand that. And once we identify those, and there may be things that we didn't even think about, we can implement into that game plan, and they can also be champions to other associates, saying, "Hey, I was a part of this focus group. There's some really cool things coming in 2021, and that are going
Exactly.
to be some great tools and resources." So now there's more of a buy-in,
Mm-hmm.
and we asked
Exactly.
for their feedback, and we gave them some time, before we roll out. Let's say beginning of Q1 of 2021, we give them time to kind of start to absorb, like, okay, now I'm understanding like what the priorities are, some of the priorities for 2021, and what's going to be available to me. So it's not a complete shock, and it's not a have to, it's a get to, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's, oh, I have to go to leadership training because I got to learn about communication, I got to learn about empathy. But now it's more of a, man, I get to go and absorb this information, learn, make myself better, as an associate, as a leader. So I think that's definitely key, is to get folks involved early on. And
Mm-hmm.
as you get their feedback, and because they're the ones that are going to be, like I said, using the programs, using, or, making the change, adding a different process, and just asking, the simple questions of, how do you think this is going to benefit you? Is this going to make your life easier, or are we actually adding things that we don't need to
Mm-hmm.
add? Calculating or tabulating that feedback, and then staying in constant communication of where you're at with that change, with that
Mm-hmm.
initiative or program, and also as it gets implemented and rolled out, allowing folks to try it and absorb it. And instead of, like, we fall in this trap as trainers, at the end of the class, what do we always ask? Any questions? And everybody just looks at you because they just got all this information, and they don't have any questions because they
Yeah.
haven't had a chance to absorb what they just learned. So giving that second option down the road to give additional feedback, now that we've implemented and rolled it out, what are some things we can do to make it better? What are some best practices that maybe we didn't identify or were aware of?
Mm-hmm.
And along the way, celebrate the wins. I think
Totally.
you have got to just put the spotlight on the associates, the teams that embrace the change, have led and locked arms with each other through this new process or program or whatever it is. And if it's making that impact, and making life easier for them as an associate, and allowing them to be that best version of themselves, that will resonate with your customers. But for us, it's our residents. And if our
Mm-hmm.
associates are having those tools and resources to, what we call one of our core values, love what they do and let it show, your customer feels that. Your customer, can appreciate that, and that brand loyalty, grows. And again,
Mm-hmm.
it's that ripple effect. But you don't get that if you just dump it in on them and just say, "Here it is, figure it out, and we're going to
Exactly.
follow up with you, and then we're going to let you know if you're not doing it right."
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, I'm bought in. This is fantastic. And we and we're humble enough as a company and as leaders, where we recognize that, like, gosh, you know what, we had, I think, our EVP of operations identified close to 50 initiatives that we rolled out in 4 to 5 years. That's
Wow.
like 10 initiatives a year. I guarantee over half of them aren't even around anymore.
Yeah.
But that's what we were as a company during our growth and our evolution, where it was go go go, and this will work. I think this will help us. Well, I think this will help us from this perspective, and again, it was that outside in approach, and luckily
Mm-hmm.
we have some great leaders that identified pre-COVID, like, we have an opportunity here to I don't want to say right the ship, because we've been
Mm-hmm.
very successful and had exponential growth, and have established a very strong brand. But and again, I referring back to Simon Sinek, in order to be in this game, though, for the long run, and weather storms like an economic crisis, or a virus, a pandemic, you have got to understand what innovation means. You have to understand what change management really looks like, successful change
Mm-hmm.
management, and be humble enough to realize when what you're doing maybe isn't the best approach, challenging that status quo, but making sure everybody is involved in understanding what your vision is, what your
Mm-hmm.
strategy is, because yes, it is the responsibility of our executives, of our C-suite leaders, to be that strategic person to be able to understand how can we set ourselves apart from our competition, and it is their responsibility to figure out those different programs, approaches, systems, whatever that looks like. But it's also their responsibility to make sure that it gets filtered down to everybody, so
Mm-hmm.
everybody understands like this is what's in the works, as we start to figure it out a little bit more and can have either data to support it or a more structured outline of what it can look like. We want to get your feedback on it and see if it makes sense. Now, does that work every single time? There's some times where they need to make an executive decision, and we do need to pivot quickly. Uh, but if you're looking at something to make it, if you're looking to set yourself up to be in the game for the long run, I would say that's some of the ways to make sure that
Mm-hmm.
you are going through change management, as increasing your chances of implementing change management, and making sure that it sticks and it helps support the organizational goals, but also helps your associates understand like they're a part of something that's different, special, and
Mm-hmm.
unique, and they want to contribute to it. And this is how I think I fit into the big picture, if they understand what that big picture looks like. So
Yeah, that makes that shift from the kind of outside in to the inside out approach makes so much sense for so many reasons, because you get people involved, which increases their buy-in. You're going to have a better quality initiative or product because it's actually something that's relevant for the people that are going to be using it. So, yeah, there's so many benefits of that, and it's not a super hard thing to do to just ask the people who it's designed for what they think about it or what they need. Like it's not yeah, not a super hard thing, but there's definitely a lot of benefits for sure to doing it that way. So that was my last question, Joe. Is there anything else you wanted to share with our viewers, or any other tidbits of advice before we wrap up?
well, first of all, I appreciate you having me on. This has been a lot of fun. Hopefully I was able to share some insight, and it's to everybody that is going through this situation, this pandemic. Really thoughts and prayers to anybody that's really been affected by this, whether it's them personally, if there's somebody else that they know. We're a pretty resilient species, and I know we'll get through this. But really, just hope everybody stays as safe as possible, and hopefully we get to do some more of these, kind of more of an in-person format.
Yeah,
I'll come up to
that'd be
Toronto, Dan. I got a lot of friends up
perfect.
there. I got the hair. We'll play some hockey. Um, and but no, I really appreciate the time, and looking forward to everybody getting back to some sort of normalcy, whatever that looks like, and whenever that happens.
Yes, I think we all are. Well, Joe, thanks so much for joining us today and sharing your insights into the skills of the future.
Thank you. I appreciate it.